Welcome to the Darkstream. VoxDay, voxday.blogspot.com. A little late tonight, sorry. I've just been busy working on some new books. We're going to have a big announcement on Thursday, it looks like. Very excited to announce a new novel. Not one of mine, unfortunately. But Stefan's book is coming, but that's not the one we'll be announcing. I'm actually working on Stefan's book now. Anyhow, there was a report that came out today, and it said that the estimate is that from 1999 to 2008, French IQ declined 3.8 points. Okay? Now this is significant. This is not minor. I mean, a 4-point IQ difference doesn't sound like much, but it's really just if you think about it, you know how atheists like to brag about being more intelligent than Christians. Well, the atheist advantage over is actually on the order of 2 points. Okay, so now somebody said, are these actual French people or not? The answer is it's actually considered a combination of both. They haven't been able to isolate the cause. It wasn't that kind of study, but they have said it is biological factors. The two main factors being what they call dysgenic fertility and replacement migration. So the replacement migration is the Muslims and Algerians and so forth, and the Africans who are entering the country. But the other reason is that the most intelligent women, whether it's in France or Germany or the US, are not having children. I believe it was in Germany that once women get to the postgraduate level, there's a 50% chance of them being barren. So basically, if you send women to college, they're not going to have kids on average. You know, they're not going to have kids at a replacement level. So the native women who are having children are the less intelligent ones. The smartest ones are not having children, and so anyhow, that was that's what's happening. Now, you can ask yourself, does this really matter? Is this really that big a deal? And the answer is absolutely, because the primary determinant of how smoothly a society operates is its average IQ level. It's fine and all for there to be brilliant people, but the most brilliant people don't really affect the way that a society runs, or the way that a society operates. Here is a good example. In Pakistan today, 153 people died in a truck crash. Now, how is that even possible? I mean, it sounds like a P.G. O'Rourke joke. P.G. O'Rourke used to joke that no matter what happened in Bangladesh, Americans would believe it. That you could say that 10,000 people died in a train crash in Bangladesh, and people would make sad faces and say, "Oh, that's too bad. I feel so sorry for them." All right. So, I mean, it's how do 153 people die in a single truck crash? That seems totally ridiculous. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this guy who keeps talking about. Look, I don't care about EQ. We're not talking about EQ. This is something to keep in mind. Don't keep asking me questions. If I ignore your question, it means I'm not interested in it. I'm talking about something else. So, the answer is it was a fuel truck. Now, what happens when a fuel truck overturns? The fuel leaks out. And what happened in Pakistan is that a bunch of Pakistanis who are not very bright on average looked at that truck with the fuel leaking out of it, and instead of deciding, that looks very dangerous and it's probably going to either burn or explode, they all ran over there to collect fuel. Now, I don't know how the explosion was triggered, but it would not be absolutely shocking if some of the people who went over there to scoop up the leaking fuel did so with a cigarette in their mouth. Why? Because we're talking about people who have, on average, IQs in the 80s. That's the kind of stuff that happens. Look at what, it's not, what ruins societies is not large amounts of people doing really stupid things. What ruins societies is the fact that less intelligent people are less likely to keep up their cars. They're less likely to keep up their houses. And guess what they do with their infrastructure? In the lowest IQ areas, Africa, Papua New Guinea, what do? They can't even keep themselves, they can't even manage to keep themselves from defecating and urinating in their water supplies. That's what low IQ people do, because they don't connect cause and effect. Or they decide that it doesn't really matter. They can't really bother to do what's necessary because they don't have the intelligence or the longer time preferences that make it worthwhile. Why walk, if you gotta go, why make yourself wait, so that you can walk 100 meters away from the water supply? Yeah, just go there, and you add that up over time, and you end up with, a society with no clean water. Now, what we've already had, I don't know if you've some of you are not in the States. It's been a long time since I've been to the States, but one thing I did notice the last time I was back there is that the infrastructure was terrible. I mean, the roads seemed to be all crumbling. That building, that bridge across the Mississippi collapsed. It was very clear that they just weren't bothering to do the kind of basic maintenance that was always done in the 60s and even in the 70s. Why? Because the USA, the average intelligence of the USA, has declined. I estimated that on the basis of migration alone, the average American IQ had declined 4 points. Interesting, isn't it, that calculation of mine, which is just an ad hoc one based on population numbers, was exactly the same as, almost exactly the same as the decline in French IQ. But here's the scary thing. That French decline happened in 10 years. My estimate for the US was post-1965. Now, it's obviously worse than that because my calculation did not involve fertility dysgenics. So realistically, the U.S. decline since we went to the moon is probably on the order of 10 points. The average IQ in the USA is probably 94 or 95 now. Yeah. Average Latino IQ is higher than black, lower than white. Like many things, their behavior and capabilities are usually halfway in between. And so, these, there's a reason when people say, oh, we could put a man on the moon. Well, guess what? The USA probably can't now, even though the technology is better. And the worst problem is that because the technology has gotten so refined and so specialized that even highly intelligent people have no ability to do anything about it. Or you can't fix an engine now. American IQ, Indian IQ is on average very low. It's around 87. It's more similar to a black IQ in that way. I'm obviously an extreme outlier. If I would be a 4S standard deviation, but because I'm an Indian, I'm actually 5 SD. So I'm a bit of a unicorn in that way. Scandinavian IQ was in the 104, 105 range. That's why Scandinavia was, basically considered kind of a paradise to live. Everybody functioned. Everybody was capable. Didn't mean they didn't have some stupid ideas. Their socialist economy and all, but it was still a very livable place. Because who has the highest IQ? The highest IQ of any country is Singapore. Average Jewish IQ is not really that high. As I'm sure you'll be shocked to know, the Jews have a tendency to play fast and loose. What they like to do is they like to brag about Ashkenazi Jewish intelligence. And they leave out Sephardic. They leave out Sephardic and Mizrahi, which tends to bring the average down. So anyhow, they do have high IQ, but it's pretty similar to the if you factor in all the stuff. I ran the numbers once. It's good, but it's nothing spectacular. So and it is kind of funny because the where they got their higher IQs from, the Ashkenazi, is probably from the Italians. So, but the other thing you need to keep in mind too is that it's very difficult to compare a very small population with a large population. Small populations almost always tend to look better. So, but in general, the highest large IQ population is the Chinese. And so, but even there are some doubts just because of that. Italian IQ is pretty normal European. But I do believe that the Italian IQ was probably higher in the past, which is probably one reason why the Renaissance took place there. There was obviously a tremendous amount of intellectual capability in Italy at that time. Why did that change? Probably for the same reason that it's changing. Why it changed in the United States, why it changed in France. And then also, of course, the Black Plague played a major role. So, anyhow, do you find Italian social norms tend towards lethargy? Yeah, absolutely. It's the same in Spain. So, I happen to find that very easy to get along with. I'm pretty laid back myself. And so, Israeli IQ is pretty low because of it's brought down by both the Palestinians and the Sephardic and Mizrahic and Ethiopian Jews. So, if I recall correctly, although actually now, because of all the immigration and dysgenics in the USA, you're seeing the same, Israeli-US IQ is probably around the same, both around 94, 95. Israel has one big advantage in that the ultra-Orthodox tend to have lots of kids, and they also tend to be pretty smart. So that's going to help average Israeli IQ. Now, the U.S. does have a similar thing, but it's on a much smaller scale. Homeschooling parents do tend to be more intelligent than the norm, and they do tend to have more kids. So that's positive. No, I don't buy into the whole, Talmud sharpening their mind. I think that's totally nonsense. Personally, I find it very easy to out-debate somebody who is prone towards Talmudic style pedantry. It's the kind of thing that looks impressive to, your average intelligences, but to the highly intelligent, it just, all it is just basically playing word games. It's the same type of thing. It's the same type of thing you see, in fact, with the new atheists. Ironically enough, they try to trick you into agreeing to a false definition, and then claim that you're incorrect based on a made-up definition. It's very, very easy to deal with people like that, because all you got to do is just say, well, what does the dictionary say? And then they're spinning their wheels arguing with the dictionary, which just looks stupid. It's kind of like, if you want to defang any atheist, or not any, but almost any atheist, they'd love to lead in with, there's no evidence for gods. And then you just say, define evidence. What is evidence? And then, okay, I'm going to really give it, who this guy is. He keeps going on about South Korea and the Talmud. Dude, nobody cares. Anyhow, whenever an atheist talks about evidence, all you do is ask him to define evidence. He will invariably define it inaccurately, and will claim that... Now, this is funny. Somebody said, worst argument ever to define something. No, then you don't understand how to argue. If you don't force people to define their terms, you will not be able to unmask the people who are being dishonest and who are basing their arguments on false premises. So, especially when somebody says that if they're like, for example, if you're arguing about the existence of God and you say there is no evidence for God, then the very first thing you have to do is ask for their definition of evidence. And like I said, atheists will inevitably attempt to substitute scientific evidence for evidence. It's a lame argument, it's a dishonest argument, and it's an argument that's very, very easily unmasked. And so, and it's also true that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, but that's all you need to do. So, I don't really debate atheists anymore, just because none of them have any arguments that I can't take down usually in 30 seconds or less. If you don't believe it, go read Peter Boghossian's book. These are supposed to be the good arguments, the great arguments that you can use to destroy people's faith on the street. It's the guide to it. I wrote a chapter-by-chapter response to each of those arguments. It's very, very easy. And so, it's kind of funny. Yeah. So it's. I mean, honestly, people keep saying they would like to see Stefan and I discuss this topic, but I have a feeling that he's moved, and to me he strikes me a lot more as an agnostic. No, I don't think that the winner of most arguments is subjective. They might be rhetoric, but yeah, I've read Hume. Not very impressed. Hume's lamest argument, the most ridiculous argument Hume made, is extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. It's totally false. And it's easy to pin somebody down when they demand that. And so, no, but see, you're wrong. You're saying if presented in the present, both sides will claim. That's not true. I beat people all the time. People end up submitting to me all the time. You can read the book. You can read both of my debates that are published. You can read on free trade, and you can also read on the existence of gods. In both cases, my opponents readily admitted that I won the debate, as did the people who were watching. So, now sometimes, no, people didn't. See, this is the thing. You guys say stupid things like this. People did not think the earth was flat 500 years ago. Read about the Greeks. They knew it wasn't flat. They even calculated 2,400, 2,500 years ago, the Greeks calculated the circumference of the earth. There's probably more people now that belong to the Flat Earth Society than ever believed the earth was flat before. How do you think people correctly say, how do you think people use the stars to sail? When, if they thought the earth was flat. Doesn't make any sense, and that's just those kind of things that people say are just false. They don't know anything about history. So, yeah. Anyhow, it's if there's one thing that I would advise you to learn, it's to learn history. The more history you read, the more you realize how mal-educated the average person is and how ignorant the average person is. It's not even necessarily about intelligence. If you don't have the information, how smart you are doesn't really matter because you just don't know what the facts are. The best history book? Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'm personally partial to I would start with something like John Julius Norwich's History of Byzantium. I would also recommend, who is it? There's the book on science, Thomas somebody other. Sapiens is kind of funny. I haven't read it yet. I'm going to because we published Martin Van Creveld, and Yuval is the author of Sapiens is actually a student of Martin Van Creveld. Yeah, Thomas Kuhn. For science, definitely read Thomas Kuhn. That's a good place to start. I'm trying to think. Wouldn't read Gibbon on it. Yeah, I guess start with Norwich. He's a good pop historian, and he does a good job of just telling the story and so forth. I don't really focus on any one particular thing. I don't know who Rodney Stark is. I don't focus on one particular thing. I just kind of read whatever strikes my fancy at the moment, and so that gives me kind of a broad, fairly eclectic background on whether it's the history of the Teutonic Crusades or whatever. Don't keep mentioning the same thing over and over again, okay? I block people who keep saying the same stuff over again, so don't do that. Shilling once is fine. Shilling twice is spam. But to get back to the original point, um, you know, to conquer this, the only way to conquer this stuff is to, number one, stop immigration from lower IQ countries and particularly of lower IQ people. And you need to get your smart people having children. If you're a smart woman, get married and have kids. If you're a smart man, get married and have kids. You know, society requires it if it's going to keep functioning. Yeah, and that's the problem. It doesn't seem to be happening. But you need to keep in mind that these demographic trends can reverse quickly. You know, it was only 15 years ago, maybe even less, that people were saying, "Oh, Russia's going to die because their demographics are so low." Well, you know, Putin came to power. Russian life expectancy has increased 12 years, and the women there are beginning to have more kids again. Why? It's all about social mood and social confidence. When people are more confident, more positive, they're more likely to get married and have kids. If they're either too decadent or they are too depressed, they don't. And so, you know, the thing is that, you know, society needs life. You know, it's true. I mean, Putin is a great leader. A lot of people may not like him, but he is definitely helping his country. You know, one hopes that Trump can do the same for the USA. Hard to say, you know. But anyhow, that's it for tonight. I was just going to mention that. No, Steve Keen is not the right author to read for your first economic book. Start with Henry Hazlitt. Start with simple. Yeah, and I should mention that too. If you haven't signed up yet for the Castelia Book Club, you can still sign up tonight, and you'll get your 2 free books. I've published like 16 or 17 books. I'm assuming you're talking about the atheism one. There's 2 books that relate to it. Number 1 is The Irrational Atheist. Number 2 is On the Existence of Gods. You can find them both on Amazon. Yeah, Henry Hazlitt, Economics in One Lesson is a good place to start. It's wildly outdated, but it's a good place to start. So, and the books for the book club, look for your emails tomorrow. There will be links, and you'll be able to get, you'll be able to download free the Missionaries, and There Will Be War Volume 1. So, anyhow, have a good evening, and we will see you next week.